How did drumming progress from a hobby to a full-time job?
The transition of my life or my hobby to a full-time job of doing what I do today, none of it happened overnight. It's been a very slow transition throughout the duration of my life. When I joined the 78th Fraser Highlanders in 1995 as a tenor drummer, I wasn't happy with any of the other tenor drumsticks on the market, first of all. So I began, the obvious thing to do was to make your own. And I remember Craig Cahoon, I'd ask questions. Craig had experimented making tenor drum beaters or mallets in the past. And I remember asking for advice along the way. I can recall, taking tennis balls apart and using the little rubber, just the rubber inside the tennis ball to make these seemingly very heavy tenor drum beaters. I remember my grandma helping me sew the little crocheted covers that would go on a traditional tenor beater, or even helping me sew, the tops of tenor drum beaters back in the day. The transition was very slow. So in other words, I began making tenor drum beaters for myself because I wasn't happy with anything else on the market, or at least what we could access in North America, in my opinion, wasn't good enough. To making them for myself, to someone in Chicago, I can recall Midlothian Pipe Band asking for tenor drum beaters, Chicago Highlanders, all these bands out of Chicago. I don't know why Chicago sticks in my mind, but all these Chicago bands asking for tenor drum beaters. And then that slowly diffusing out to the area surrounding Chicago, to New York, to Houston, and the list goes on. So I wasn't alone in my quest or my search for, the greatest tenor drum beater. The rest of the world, it seemed, was also looking for an improvement off of what existed. So I began doing them for myself, and then sending them out to occasional, a few bands that wanted them, to now to where we are today, probably producing the far majority of tenor drum beaters in the world. Now, in terms of the clinic side of it, I spend a lot of my time today, probably 80% of my life, on the road. And what that entails is teaching clinics and master classes on pipe band tenor drumming. I did my first clinic. It was called Keltfest, and it was for the 78th Fraser Highlanders. And Craig Cahoon had actually hired me to do that gig as a fundraiser for the band to go to Scotland. And I taught my first clinic, and I remember Craig telling me he did a really, really good job at that. I remember he was behind, helping get me, jobs in Seattle in 1998 with some of the best bagpipers and drummers in the world. I can recall meeting John Fisher that year for the first time, and Ian McClellan and Roddy McLeod and all these greats, in the drumming world, and teaching a clinic in Seattle with them. And that was really the start of my traveling schedule getting insane. I was going to high school during the week and hopping on a plane, for the weekend to teach a clinic somewhere in North America, or in some far off place. So I don't know how I did that, and I especially don't know how I did that through university as well. Same thing. I'd go to class from Monday to Thursday, and then hop on a plane Friday and come back for my exam Monday morning. It was a lot, and I don't know how I balanced those two things. In hindsight, I simply don't know how I'm still alive. I don't mean that seriously, but the amount of pressure just with university alone is pretty intense. But trying to balance this, this drumstick line on the side, and then this whole travel schedule, doing these clinics, it was a lot for me to deal with. So I would say that official transition took place around 1998, when I started traveling on a regular basis, and essentially started selling my drumsticks out to distributors all over the world. And things have only gotten busier and busier since that point in time.
So you had mentioned teaching clinics and master classes. In addition to that, where are you now in your career?
Oh God, I think if you asked any professional or any musician or anything where they are in their career, they'd say they're nowhere. I think it's definitely the way I feel every day, is that I haven't gotten to nearly, I haven't gotten to far as many things as I have, going on in my head. Um, I think since those first days in the 78th, I found a way of streamlining the manufacturing process for tenor drum beaters in a way that I don't think anyone else ever has up to this point in time. That's my ultimate goal was, as the demand for the product began to increase, I had to find a way to mass manufacture them, but at the same time improve quality. And that's a huge challenge because normally mass manufacturing and 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 quality don't go hand in hand. So I met with some of the smartest engineers you could ever meet here in Kincardine, and they helped me devise a plan on how to get the numbers out the door, but at the same time create a better product than what was being done when I was hand making the sticks. So in terms of where I see us going, well, I found a way of injection molding sticks, and that had never been done before for bass and tenor drum sticks. And I found a way of injection molding, so essentially the way a Barbie doll would be made, pumping material through a mold and letting that material harden and produce the end the end product or end result. I found a way to do that, which meant that there were no loose counterparts in the stick. In other words, the knob and the head were all one piece. Okay, so what that meant is that it opened up 100 doors, of opportunity in terms of what the future had in store for tenor drum beaters. So since that point in time, I found I established the Tie-Fry Classic, which was the injection molded beater with black shaft. I established the Tie-Fry Platinum, which was essentially trying to improve off of everything I wanted to do with the Classic, but at the time couldn't do, or didn't have the time or the resources to do it, to do back then. So we launched the Platinum in 2004, and then we launched the Tie-Fry Practice Beater in 2005, which was essentially a practice pad for tenor drummers, something they'd never had before. Using essentially a rubber responsive head like a snare drummer's practice pad, but having a shaft that could be easily flourished as well. So it allowed them to for their actual tenor sticks to last longer. They didn't have to hit tables with these nice soft heads, and it allowed in terms of the drum corps the execution to be heard within the tenor section as well. So we came a long way between 1995 and 2004 with the Classic, the Platinum, and the Practice Beater. And in terms of where I see things going, I would love to continue to improve off that Platinum concept and the Practice concept established back then. And I'm in the process of creating better tenor drum beaters than I've ever been able to produce, and I would assume many of my competitors as well. So I'm in the process of doing that. I've been in the process of doing that since 2004, is coming up with the next best thing that I need for myself, that as a result I believe other people would want as well. So that's on the what do you want to call it, the business side of it, but more just the side of it that I one of my drives me the largest my greatest passion. On the clinic side, I love traveling. I love meeting other fellow tenor drummers. It's not like we're in soccer or ice hockey, where you can meet, when you go to a town, you can meet 100 people that share that same that same influence or experience. Pipe band tenor drumming is great because I love traveling and meeting other pipe band, bass, and tenor drummers, and I don't ever want to give up traveling to do these clinics and judging these events, etc. However, I'd love to be able to reach out to people that have never been able to attend a clinic, or it's simply not geography essentially isn't working in their favor, but they want to learn and grow as a tenor drummer. So I'm in the process of working on a bunch of video lessons that would allow people to download them straight off the website and learn. Something I failed to mention was the Tie-Fry Interactive Tenor Drumming. It was a CD-ROM, and DVD that I started working on in 2000 with one of Canada's top production companies called the McClellan Group. They do work for the Royal Bank of Canada and other very, very, very large corporations in North America, including GM, and, well, the list goes on, Cisco. I created a CD-ROM essentially to give people everything I wished I'd had while I was watching those videos at home, trying to learn tenor drumming, and kind of fusing it with some of the basic rhythmic knowledge that I was learning from Craig Cahoon and Doug Stronach during my snare drumming upbringing, and kind of trying to fuse that together into an interactive CD-ROM package and associated DVD. However, I'd like to make all that even more accessible so that they don't have to buy this whole software package essentially and just be able to download what they want through the website. So I'm in the process of putting together all kinds of basic flourish lessons and rhythmic development stuff that'll all be available digitally at a reasonable price, because you don't have the overhead costs of all this massive production, when you're doing them that way. And I think that's where the future of at least the business side of it stands. In terms of my own career, I've got 100 ideas of things I want to do. We moved from a stage of essentially never hitting a drum while flourishing to only hitting rhythmically in the 70s, and then in the 90s we found a way to kind of fuse the visual or the rhythm, the flourishing with the rhythm, what goes on the drum together, and more importantly to do it on drums that have really great tone and with immaculate tuning in relation to the bagpipe. And I think we have a lot of room for growth on all three of those fronts, rhythmically, visually, and especially sound-wise or harmonically with the bagpipe. And that's going to be the next stage for us as musicians, and hence where these clinics and aspects of my career, I as a tenor pipe and tenor drummer, I hope are going to go.